when women organize, when we create movements, when we come together, we win. And when we win, we protect democratic institutions. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that these extreme politicians are now attacking women's freedoms and women's rights. They're trying to silence us. They are trying to create more chaos, more division. And what we're doing here in the state of Florida is we're creating a very strong movement.
Hello, and welcome to the PoliticsGirl podcast. I'm your host, Lee McGowan. Let's get into it. I don't need to tell you that we have a very important election coming up on November 5th. We talk a lot about the presidential election and which direction we want our country to go. And I think we understand how essential it is that we flip the House from the Republican-led 118th, which has passed the least amount of bills than any Congress in modern American history, back to a democratically led House that might actually be able to accomplish things for the American people. And while I believe that will be hard work, I think it's entirely possible. So today I want to talk about the other branch of Congress, the U.S. Senate, because I think it's the Senate that we have to be particularly concerned about. Democrats and anyone who wants to keep their Social Security, the Affordable Care Act, and who believes in human rights are looking at what's called a bad map, meaning the Democrats have to defend far more seats than the Republicans do, and the seats they have to defend are mostly in what are called toss-up states or lean red states, states like Nevada, Arizona, Ohio, Wisconsin. It's an uphill climb, not an impossible climb, but an uphill one. And with so much on the line, we can't afford to lose this body of government to a bunch of nihilists who stand behind some of the most destructive policies and the absolute most destructive presidential candidate in American history. So to keep democracy's head above water, the Democrats need what's called a trifecta, meaning the presidency, the House, and the Senate. And keeping the Senate is going to be a tough slog, which is why I want to talk about two Senate races today that few to no people are paying attention to. Two Senate races no one is investing in because it's assumed that they've already been won by Republican candidates, when the truth is they have not. And this weird defeatist culture is why we keep fighting over the same 6 states. Democrats can't just keep ceding certain states to Republicans, assuming all is lost and no Democrat can ever win there. It's not fair to the people who have different opinions in those states. It's not fair to the people who lose their rights thanks to Republican policies. And it's not democratic. People should have a candidate to vote for, and that candidate should have the opportunity to win. So today we're going to talk to two women, Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, or DMP from Florida, and then take a quick break and come back with Katrina Christensen from North Dakota. We're going to hear their stories and remind ourselves that no state should be written off, that everyone deserves a chance to be represented in America, and with so much on the line, we need to support every Democrat running. The party might not be focusing on these two races, but we, the people, should be, because they can win. DMP is running against the monster Rick Scott in Florida, and Katrina is running against the completely forgettable do-nothing Kevin Cramer in North Dakota. Both men believe their Senate seats are a lock, and I am under the opinion that both men are wrong. So without further ado, please welcome my first guest, former Florida Congresswoman and first South American immigrant to be elected to Congress, Senate candidate for the state of Florida, Debbie Mucarsel-Powell. Welcome, Debbie, or as they call you there, DMP.
DMP, hi, how are you? I'm so happy to be with you today.
I'm really happy to have you. I mean, I got in touch with your campaign when I was trying to draw attention to a couple of these under the radar but stellar Senate candidates who had more or less been written out of the national narrative, right? Because you guys are running in what are considered safe red states. But as I understand it right now, people are starting to think Florida and even Texas might be the best opportunities for Democrats to actually flip a seat from red to blue. And it's hard not to think that if we won Florida, we would be keeping the Senate.
That's right. And, you know, there's this misperception that, like you said, that Florida's red. And yes, 2022 was a terrible year for us here in the state of Florida. But this happened because extremists like Donald Trump, like DeSantis, came to the state, tried to take over, tried to really control the messaging and tell everyone that this was going to be a red state. You know, they have a higher voter registration, but it doesn't represent the electorate. We are a bright purple state, and we've been seeing it for the past year. And this is what I've been saying. Yeah. In Jacksonville, we elected the first Democratic mayor in over 25 years, Donna Deegan. just a couple of months ago, we flipped a seat here in a special election. It was a Republican-held seat by 11 points. Tom Keene was elected to be the Democratic state representative by 3 points. It was a 14-point shift. And everywhere I go, everywhere I travel, red counties, blue counties, here in the state of Florida, everyone's done with the extremism, all the policies that they've passed, and they're ready to get to work so that we can make a change in the state of Florida. And also, just to point this out, so Rick Scott is the most vulnerable, unpopular Republican here in Florida. He cannot break his numbers, no matter what he does, because people here have gotten to know him. They know that he committed the largest Medicare fraud in the history of this country when he was CEO of HCA Columbia. They know now that he is completely radical in his views. He wants to eliminate Social Security and Medicare. He wants to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And he has co-sponsored a national abortion ban and supports the 6-week abortion ban here in the state of Florida. So for all those reasons and so many more, we're ready to flip the seat in November.
Yeah, and that seat deserves to be flipped because the people of Florida deserve actual representation for the things that they want. I mean, you're mentioning Rick Scott, right? And he's so sure he's going to win. He's already running to take over for Republican leader when Mitch McConnell steps down from the job. Now, Rick would most likely be the Trump pick for the job, but he would be competing for the position against John Thune from South Dakota, who would be McConnell's choice, and then John Cornyn from Texas. And all three of those men would be terrible for America as the Republican Senate leader. But if we take Trump's favorite out of the running and we win Florida and you sit in that seat instead, all the better. You were just mentioning, so far in the Senate, Rick Scott has held up most of President Biden's appointments to the courts, to the military, to foreign service. Despite the fact that he says he will leave abortion to the states, he would definitely pass a national abortion ban if that's what Trump wanted. Despite the fact that he says he wants to keep Social Security and Medicare, he's the one who wrote down that he wants to phase it out. He would repeal the Affordable Care Act. He would raise taxes on regular families while cutting taxes on the ultra-rich, of which he is one because of his huge, giant Medicare scam where he stole all that money from seniors in Florida. And so what do you say to the people of Florida when you go out there and you say, like, this is why I'm better than Rick Scott? It seems like an obvious message, and yet what is the message you're telling people?
Well, it's funny because, Lee, everywhere I go, people come to my events, and many of them are Republicans, by the way, that they want to get to know me, to meet me, because they cannot stand Rick Scott. They don't want to vote for Rick Scott. He is known here. His name ID is high in the state of Florida, but he's incredibly unpopular. And it's funny because I've been telling everyone around the country, this is an opportunity, like you said, to stop this man from not only getting reelected, but also even having the idea of becoming Senate Majority Leader. He would be a catastrophe for not only Florida families, but American families. And we do have this unique opportunity if everyone would pay attention to the fact that we can actually win in a state because of his policies, because he has blocked any sort of bipartisan compromise on investing on green energy, on investing on creating American jobs here in the state of Florida, of making sure that we continue to reduce the price of medicine. He wants to repeal that cap on insulin, the $35 cap. He wants to eliminate Social Security and Medicare. And when I talk about those issues, Floridians immediately understand that this is an election that's going to matter, not only for Florida, but for the country, that this is an election that they have to make sure that they come out to vote for. And we're seeing that energy on the ground. People across the country cannot for a second leave Florida behind for all those reasons, but also because if you care about the environment, you have to invest in Florida. We have the only living coral reefs in the entire continental United States. If you care about ethnic representation in government, you need to invest in Florida. We are close to being a majority minority state. I'm the only Latina Democrat running in the entire country, Lee. And I am going to be the only Latina at the top of the ticket running here in the state of Florida as a Democrat. If you care about working unions, you have to invest in Florida. DeSantis has been, and the extremists have been attacking unions for too long, trying to dismantle them, trying to destroy the middle class. I mean, there's so many issues I can continue talking about, but most importantly, a woman's right to choose, a woman's reproductive freedom. Florida used to be the state where it would provide this critical health care for women across the southern region. And now with the 6-week abortion ban, women are being forced to travel to Virginia to get this critical health care. This is a privacy issue. This is a civil rights issue. It's a healthcare issue for a woman, and it should be decided between a woman, her doctor, her family, and her faith. There should be no government interference in that decision, especially not from someone like Rick Scott, who has been attacking women's rights from the moment he was governor in the state.
Yeah. And a couple weeks ago, Rick Scott just voted for he voted against the Bipartisan Right to Contraception Act, right? Rick Scott has a A+ rating from the anti-IVF and anti-contraception extremist groups. And we know that he will vote for a nationwide abortion ban if he's back in the Senate. So it feels very obvious that we, in this case, we meaning women, clearly can't afford to have Rick Scott and these extremists winning this body of government or back in office where they can take our rights away from us. I mean, I think all of this behavior just goes to show us that this was never about states' rights. You know, just as the amount of women who are dying and being permanently scarred and physically destroyed by these laws in red states right now shows us it was never about life. It was always about control. Now, Rick has this new ad out where he just looks like the nicest guy. He's on a white background. He's talking about how he's a grandpa and his daughter is going through IVF and how he would never get rid of IVF. But he's also turned the comments off on every single social media that he's put this ad out on, because you can't put the truth underneath it, which is that he would vote against it, which he is voting against contraception. The whole thing seems so disingenuous, and it's so indicative of the way the Republicans are running their campaigns.
Yeah, he's a fraud, Lee. I'm gonna say that as a matter of fact, because people here know who he is.
Yeah.
He's using the money that he took from the government to now lie to Floridians, and he can try and lie away his record, but he cannot lie knowing that he has actually stood by the most extreme Republicans in Washington, D.C. who support the life of conception bill. He voted against protecting contraception for women. He has said many times that he will pass any anti-abortion bill that comes to his desk. He actually has repeatedly said that he supports the 6-week abortion ban and that he's a very proud pro-life. And like you said, this is not about life, because he's also in the pocket of the gun lobby. If he cared so much about life, then he would make sure that he would protect our children from being killed every day to gun violence. So I don't want to hear it. It's complete BS when he says that. And we can't allow these self-funded, corrupt politicians to use money to lie to their constituents, then to go back, get power, and then hurt the entire country. That's why this race is one of the most important races that we have right now in the country. We can't allow Rick Scott to get reelected and then go back and try and lead the Senate.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, you just mentioned gun violence. I mean, I know that you very tragically lost your own father to gun violence, and that very understandably turned you into a lifelong advocate for reducing crime and keeping guns out of the hands of criminals. Why don't you tell people what you would be pushing for in the Senate, as opposed to Rick, who we know will continue to do nothing as our citizens are brutalized by firearms and gun violence every day in America?
Yeah, when I was 24, I actually received that call that my father had been killed by gun violence. And it's a pain and a trauma that has brought me together with so many families here in the state of Florida who lost loved ones at Pulse. We're about to honor those victims 8 years ago that were killed at that club in Orlando. We know that pain, and we relived it on 2018 at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting. And we see it every single day here in the state of Florida. And I think it's the biggest moral failure that we allow these politicians to do nothing while we continue to see our children dying to this epidemic. And so when I get to the Senate, and I've already had conversations with Senator Murphy, who has been a great voice in the gun violence movement, we are going to work together to make sure that we lead the efforts to pass a universal background check bill, but also we must ban assault weapons. These weapons are weapons of war. They do not belong in civilian hands and in our streets. We know that most of the mass shootings have been committed with these AR-15s, these assault weapons, where so many people here in the state can go to a gun show and just purchase one. It's incredible to me that in America, we are right now turning our backs on the issue that matters most to everyone. And that's the issue of saving lives, saving our children, protecting our communities in order to make sure that we have a better tomorrow and a better country. And so it's central to everything that I do. It's something that has made me focus on fighting for justice, but also fighting for our children. And it will be central when I get to the Senate.
Understandably. I mean, I think we should also remind people that the abortion laws and the gun laws kind of go hand in hand, that abortion bans increase the risk of violence against women, that every month an average of 70 women are shot and killed in this country by an intimate partner. And those numbers go up when the person is pregnant. And the Florida legislature knew that when they passed their 6-week ban at the same time that they passed a permitless carry in the state, and that they're putting women in danger again. And yet here we are. So we need these common sense gun laws. We need these federal laws to protect the people because certain states clearly just aren't willing to do it.
Mhm. No, exactly. And actually, I'm glad that you brought that point up because I talk about this also. I come from Latin America, and in Colombia, in Argentina, in Mexico, they passed laws to protect a woman's right to have access to abortion, to have access to that reproductive care, because it's directly linked to a high rate of violence against women and also to high rates of maternal mortality. And of course, we know here in the United States, it disproportionately affects Black women, Latina women here in this country. And so they know exactly what they're doing. When women organize, when we create movements, when we come together, we win. And when we win, we protect democratic institutions. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that these extreme politicians are now attacking women's freedoms and women's rights. They're trying to silence us. They are trying to create more chaos, more division. And what we're doing here in the state of Florida is we're creating a very strong movement. We got the signatures to have this amendment on the ballot in November. We have that infrastructure ready to go. And it includes over 150,000 Republican voters who actually signed on to this petition. This is not a partisan issue. This is an issue of freedom. It's an issue of civil rights. And Floridians are ready to come out and make sure that we pass the amendment and elect me. Because if we re-elect Rick Scott, it will mean nothing if we enshrine that ballot amendment into our Constitution and then he goes back to the Senate and passes a national abortion ban.
So true. And you keep talking about how you're such a proud Latina, and I think it's so amazing. Born in South America, like many American stories, you came to this country with your family at a young age in search of a better life. You're literally the American dream. And as an immigrant myself, I know what it's like to be from a place, but not of a place, to see things through a bit of a different lens and have a different perspective, because we both know how essential it is that we fight for democracy and for human rights, and that what we have here in America is really special and it shouldn't be lost. So before you go, and I travel all the way up to the top of the country to talk to your fellow Senate candidate, Katrina Christensen, who I also believe can win her red state. As a Latina with such a large Latin community in Florida, what do you think is the best way to approach these communities? Because Senator Scott is using his vast amounts of money to buy up every ad in Spanish language TV, Spanish language radio, and there are many Latinos who love Trump, despite the fact that he has been extremely vocal about rounding them up and doing mass deportations, not just at the border, but throughout the entire country. But the Latin community itself is not a monolith, right? So it's absolutely essential that we win this vote, but there's so many different voices in that vote. So as a Latina, how are you approaching that?
Yeah, look, and Latinos, like any other group, will respond to people that are speaking directly to them. And we have missed that opportunity in many places of being directly present in these communities. I have always been present. And of course, this is not political for me,
No.
Lee. This is very personal, right? I mean, I have been talking to my communities here in Florida about the issues that matter most, which is giving opportunities to our children, giving a good education, good access to a good quality education. That's what brought us here. That's why I'm here talking to you, because I was able to get a good quality education, the ultimate equalizer that provides those opportunities for so many children across the country. I've been talking on Spanish radio, Spanish TV. Spanish is my first language. When they hear my story that my mother brought my sisters and I looking for freedom, looking for opportunities, that because of those opportunities, I am where I am today, that directly connects to families across the board, Latino families, of course, but also families across the state of Florida. And Rick Scott will never understand what it's like to leave your home country behind because of violence, because of political persecution, because you're leaving an authoritarian or a dictatorship that's destroying the economic, social, and political institutions in these countries. He has no idea. He's completely out of touch. And Latinos see right through that. So he can spend all the money he has. It's only going to get him so far. I have been getting a lot of support across the state from all different groups, Venezuelans, Puerto Ricans, Ecuadorians, Cubans. It doesn't matter. For them, it's about looking at the candidate that's going to represent them best. And no one will do that better than myself, who has lived that story.
Yeah. You've absolutely lived that story. It's a full working class background as opposed to a super rich elite background, Like, I think that's also a huge difference. It doesn't matter if you're a Latina or you're, you look like me, right? Like you understand what it's like to, work yourself through things. You worked in a donut shop making minimum wage when you went through school. You know what it's like to be a working mom and a caretaker of an elderly parent. I'm sure that perspective gives you an edge connecting with regular people, some way that a super ultra rich person like Rick Scott couldn't possibly ever do.
Yeah, and the funny thing, and I'll leave this with you to think about, the clearest contrast when you look at me versus Rick Scott. Rick Scott loves to talk about donuts also, by the way. He bought donut shops. He bought donut shops to give a donut shop to his mom so she can have a job, whereas I was the minimum wage worker working at a donut shop. That's who he is. That's who I am. It's the ethic of strong and hard work that has brought us to where we are today. And I think that that's the story of so many Americans. He's completely out of touch. He has no clue. He continues to make money off his Senate seat in the Senate. And that's why he's doing everything in his power to make sure that he gets reelected. We're not going to let him do that. But he feels threatened. He knows people know who he is. And he knows that right now, everything is on the line.
Yeah. It is on the line, and we can totally take this state back from him. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today, Debbie. I understand Republicans have an advantage in Florida with DeSantis doing all he can to limit Democratic votes and Trump at Mar-a-Lago and the Republicans registered versus the Democrats registered. But, you guys are doing so well. The Democrats are doing so well, flipping these House seats, getting these mayoral races, coming back. I think that it is not going to be long until we see Florida once again as the purple state that it is, or even a blue-leaning one, because as far as I'm concerned, especially when it comes to abortion care, IVF, contraception, Social Security, Medicare, affordable health care, it is still a blue state when it comes to values. So please tell people how they can best help your campaign or turn their friends and family who are in Florida onto your candidacy.
Well, first, I would love everyone to go to Debbie for Florida, FOR, Florida.com. It's my website. Please sign up to volunteer to help. We're going to start doing phone banks and a lot of other events that are going on across the state. And please contribute whatever you can do. We are running against a self-funder who put $64 million of his own money into the 2018 race. This is his first re-election. He barely won in 2018. He only won by 10,000 votes. We know that if we have the resources, we can beat him in November. Would love for you to follow me, Debbie4FL, on all my social media. You'll also see all the things that we're doing. I'm so grateful to you, Lee, because we have this unique opportunity right now to win the Senate seat, to make sure that we stop him from passing extreme legislation at the Senate level, but also to start turning things around, like you said, here in the state of Florida. Floridians are fighting. They're fighting back. We have some incredible Democratic members of our state legislature, and we have people on the ground here, independent voters who are voting for Democrats, who are working hand in hand with us to make sure that we reject the extremism that has been coming out. This is a great time for us to be in Florida with your support to make sure that we fight back. And with all of us working together, I feel very optimistic that we're going to be able to show the country who we truly are here in the state of Florida.
I couldn't agree more. We just need more people to understand what's on the line. I always say, we need to decide which direction we want the country to go. The way of the ultra-rich who will take us and our rights all the way down the line, or the way of the people, where our voice still matters and our rights are our own. And that's what's on the line between you and Rick Scott. And I hope we can get enough people to realize that before it's too late. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I really appreciate it. And for the rest of you, we'll be back right after this with North Dakota Senate candidate, who really could be the upset of the season, Katrina Christensen. This podcast is sponsored by Marley Spoon. You guys, Marley Spoon is so good. Literally, our family has been doing it for a month now, and every week we're like, holy hell, this is just consistently excellent. In all honesty, it is a night and day difference than any other meal kit we've tried. This week we had beef smashed gyros and oven fries, chicken scallopini, and fried chicken tacos. We usually have 4 meals, but we changed it this week because we had so many plans. Marley Spoon makes it easy to change it, easy to cook, and the quality of the food is second to none. Every week there are over 100 different and delicious recipes to choose from, and it's completely customizable. Our family eats everything, but if you're looking for vegetarian meals, family-friendly dishes, dishes for bigger families, low-carb options, Marley Spoon has choices for you. You can even order things like a roast or spare rib dinner with all the fixings for a big crowd. It's amazing. You can add things from their pantry, like all the ingredients to make a cake from scratch, or you can order desserts to go with the meal. I keep ordering individual pizzas for our freezer because they come from the fancy pizza place around the corner that we like in LA. Marley Spoon is just not your typical meal kit. So experience the most personalized meal kit today with Marley Spoon. Head to marleyspoon.com/offer/politicsgirl and use the code PoliticsGirl for up to 25 free meals. That's right, up to 25 free meals with Marley Spoon. Again, that is MARLEY spoon.com/offer/politicsgirl for up to 25 free meals, and make sure you use my promo code PoliticsGirl so they know that we sent you. Marley Spoon. I completely understand why Martha Stewart gave it her stamp of approval, because it has mine too. So I've been talking a lot about Rhone lately. Rhone is a performance lifestyle brand with stylish, functional business casual wear that's both high quality and comfortable. I ordered a couple of shirts and pants for my boys from what Rhone calls the Commuter Collection, which is a comfortable, breathable, versatile set of products for men with pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, polos, and blazers. They all look great alone, but they work seamlessly together. Rhone is treated with Gold Fusion anti-odor technology for more wears between washes, but also it's the summer, so it'll just let you stay fresh and clean all day long. Rhone's signature 4-way stretch fabric is breathable, flexible, and works everywhere from the golf course to the office. The Commuter Collection also features wrinkle-free technology, which is 100% machine washable. My husband also said it feels like there's forgiveness in the fabric. Because it's stretch, he said he feels like if he gained a little weight or lost a little weight, it would still be flattering. So check it out for yourself. The Commuter Collection can get you through any workday straight into whatever comes next. Just head to rhone.com/politicsgirl and use the promo code PoliticsGirl to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to rhone.com/politicsgirl and use the code PoliticsGirl. As they say at Rhone, it's time to find your corner office comfort. Check out their website today at rhone.com/politicsgirl. So my husband was just in San Diego and got to try the Birch mattress we got for my brother and sister-in-law. They have a beautiful new ADU, and everyone who stayed there has told them how comfortable the bed was. But Sean got to try it, and he said it's fantastic. And why shouldn't it be? Birch mattresses are stylish, comfortable, non-toxic mattresses made in America and crafted with natural and organic materials that have been sustainably sourced. Birch only uses the finest quality materials like organic fair trade cotton, organic wool, and natural latex. Constructed with non-toxic materials and focusing on breathability to keep you cool at night. Unlike synthetic mattresses, the wool in Birch mattresses make them hypoallergenic. So if you want to enjoy a deep and restful night's sleep, consider getting a new mattress from Birch. Birch knows there's no better way to try a new mattress than by sleeping on it, which is why they offer a 100-night risk-free trial to try out the new mattress and see how your body adjusts. And if you do love it, Birch believes so strongly in the quality of their product that each mattress includes a 25-year warranty. Birch mattresses are shipped directly from the manufacturer to your home for free. The mattresses come rolled up in a box, and according to Sean's brother, they are super easy to set up. So, give Birch a try. Right now, Birch is giving 20% off all mattresses and 2 free EcoRest pillows at birchliving.com/politicsgirl. That's Birch, BIRCH, living.com/politicsgirl. Sleep better with Birch. Support for today's episode comes from OneSkin. And if you have sensitive skin, then you know how hard it can be to find a product that doesn't cause irritation. But OneSkin's topical supplements are formulated with soothing ingredients and natural antioxidants and are gentle enough to use every day. Free from over 1,500 chemicals and preservatives that can make your skin red or irritated or itchy, their products are safe for sensitive skin. OneSkin's products are powered by their scientifically proven peptide called OS1. This peptide reduces the accumulation of damaged, aging cells, the ones that make your skin less resilient and more prone to lines and wrinkles. OneSkin has a full line of face and body products, including Shield, which is their sunscreen and what I've been using, that prevents UV-induced aging and repairs cellular aging all at once. I wear it every day. I really like it. It's smooth, it's easily absorbed, and as someone with sensitive skin, I have had absolutely no trouble with it. Founded by an all-woman team of scientists, OneSkin's products are backed by an extensive lab and clinical data to validate their success and safety on all skin types. Not only that, they're the first and only skin company to target cellular sentience, which is a key hallmark of aging. Their topical supplements are the easiest way to keep your skin healthy and hydrated without the harsh ingredients or irritation often found in other skincare products. So try it for yourself. OneSkin is more than skincare. It's about skin longevity, targeting the root causes of aging to help you look and feel your best at every age. Get started today with 15% off by using the code PoliticsGirl at oneskin.co. That's 15% off at oneskin.co with the code PoliticsGirl. And after you purchase, when they ask you how you heard about them, please support the show and tell them that we sent you. It's time to expect more from your skincare routine. Invest in the health of your skin with OneSkin. Welcome back. We're now lucky to have a conversation with another and even more overlooked Democrat, Katrina Christensen, running for Senate in North Dakota. And here's what I want you to think of going into this conversation. North Dakota has a population of a little less than 780,000 people. So because the House is based on population, North Dakota only has one congressperson. But because of the Great Compromise at our country's founding, North Dakota has 2 senators, the exact same amount of senators as Florida, with its 22 million people, or California, with its 40 million people. So who goes to the Senate from these small states like North Dakota is incredibly important because those states get a disproportionate amount of power compared to the rest of the nation in this branch of government. The Senate is grossly weighted for these small, rural, often red states, which gives Republicans a far outsized power in the deliberative body that is the U.S. Senate. So if we get a chance to flip one of these seats, we have to, in order to better represent the overall sentiment of the country. I have been saying for a long time that we need to have a 50-state solution, that we can't just continue to cede the ground to Republicans and say, well, that state is theirs, let's not even bother to compete. We need to be competing everywhere, not just because we have better ideas, but because our citizens deserve a working democracy. We see what happens when everything is red. Women lose their rights, doctors move out of their states, kids get shot in their school, and we keep doing nothing about it. I keep saying we're not voting for a party, we're voting for a vision of America. We're voting for the kind of country we want to live in, and most of us don't want to live in an autocratic nation with the federal government stripping people of their freedoms. Democrats can win in North Dakota, and historically they have. In fact, less than 20 years ago, Democrats had a strong foothold in the Midwest. So how we got to this place where we think the Republicans can't be beaten here is wrong. When Democrats raise money to compete, they win, or at the very least, they come close enough that it starts to change people's perception of what's possible. In this case, winning a Senate seat in North Dakota is possible. This race is legitimately competitive, but no one is paying attention to it because North Dakota is considered R+20. They think it's lost, and it's not. So without further ado, please welcome North Dakota candidate for U.S. Senate, Katrina Christensen. Welcome, Katrina.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, thank you for joining me. Yeah, this is amazing, right? Last election season, we had Brian Bangs on, who was a Democrat running for Senate in South Dakota, because I thought it was so important that people understood how essential it is that we run these competitive candidates in these safe red states, because if we keep doing that, they won't be safe for long.
Absolutely. It's really important that we work not only this cycle, but all the next cycles to compete in red states because we have polarization. Out on the trail, back in October when I started and I introduced myself as Katrina Christensen, I'm running for U.S. Senate. One of the first questions that I could get, particularly in rural communities, was which party? And then I would say I'm running as a Democrat. And they would put their arms up. And I would engage in a conversation with them and I would talk to them about how my opponent is a career politician who isn't working for them. He's accepted a lot of money from corporate PACs. He hasn't passed more than one bill in the last 10 years. And the one that he did pass was getting a building's name changed. So it's really important that we have competitive races where we have resources and we can get our message out there to voters because their arms come down. And at the end of that conversation I was telling you about, they shake your hand. And it's just gotten better and better as we've been out campaigning.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, your race, unlike poor Brian, who was running against Mitch McConnell's second in command, John Thune, your race is really shaping up to be competitive. Like you're saying, your opponent, his name's Kevin Kramer. He has like the weakest support of any federal elected official in North Dakota. He's, as you were saying, a career politician. He previously lost 3 statewide races. His public and private polling is terrible. Polls in North Dakota only have him at a 33% chance of people wanting to reelect him. And then there's 27% who want to replace him and 27% who are openly considering someone else, which is what gives you a real chance. So tell me about Kevin. Why do you think you can beat him?
Well, like you said before, he's lost 3 times before. He has a really poor voting record. So whether you're a senior citizen, he voted against capping prescription drug prices. A couple weeks ago, I was out west and there was a voter who was talking about how they'd have to go to Canada to buy insulin because a vial could cost anywhere but $200 to $400. And it's just really unbelievable that Kevin would do that to over 100,000 seniors, that he wouldn't stand up for them against Big Pharma. And it's not a surprise because he's taken money from Big Pharma. Or if you're a young woman or, an older woman, right? 65% of women aged 15 to 49 are on contraception. He voted last month against the right to contraception for all of the women in the United States of America and for those that he represents in North Dakota. And it's unacceptable. He's also voted to repeal the ACA as many times as they've brought it up. And so he has no respect for the people of the state and the health care that they need. And so I think that's really important. He's also really been strident about Biden's performance at the border. But when the bipartisan border bill came up to stop fentanyl coming into our communities, to have humane ways of dealing with our migration crisis, he wouldn't vote for it because he's a sycophant. He does what Trump tells him to do, even though Trump's not his boss. The voters of North Dakota are his boss.
Absolutely. To me, he's one of the best opponents you could ask for. I mean, you look at his time in office, he's basically done nothing to help the people. He's an epitome of a career politician who's votes the way his party tells him to, not the way the people want him to, right? You're talking about he's voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act 1 million times. He's a guaranteed vote against middle-class values, middle-class things that they need, against Medicare, probably against Social Security. He was against negotiating cheaper drug prices. You know,
he voted
Joe
against
Biden
the
got
PACT
that
Act.
$35.
He voted against our vets. So there are over 70,000 vets in North Dakota. He voted against healthcare for our veterans. And so he is a really good opponent because we don't have to make up things. He's just been really bad representing us in Washington, D.C. And, he also voted against the CHIP Act. So whenever we talk about growing the economy or investing in...
And bringing new manufacturing back here, because people don't know the CHIP Act, it's bringing... Yeah. So I feel like someone like you has a far better idea of what the people of North Dakota would want, right? You grew up in a tiny town in Pender, Nebraska, which has just over 1,000 people. You were young, your family lost their farm, and your dad had to work as a laborer, and you all struggled to get by. So you know what it's like to grow up with the help of federal programs like Head Start and food stamps and the WIC program. So all the programs that the Republicans want to cut actually allowed you personally, who could have fallen through the cracks, to thrive, right? You became your high school class valedictorian. You moved to Iowa for college and you earned a degree in biological systems engineering. You're such a smarty pants. And then you were driven by what I can only assume is a passion for agriculture and energy, both which I would add are crucial to the North Dakota infrastructure and economy. And then you earned a master's in 2006 and a PhD in 2011 in agricultural engineering, right? And now you're a professor of engineering at the University of Jamestown in North Dakota. And then you got Kevin, right? Who's running to represent America's billionaire class, far-right Christian nationalism, whatever Trump is standing for these days. And you're out here running for Senate because you actually understand the needs of the people in North Dakota, the farmers, the laborers, the essential workers, the land itself. And that's running for all the right reasons. Now, my guess is you can't really run as a big D Democrat in North Dakota. You said at the beginning, people put their hands up right away like, I can't vote for a Democrat. So do you run as a populist? Do you run as an outsider non-politician? Like, what's the argument against you and how are you countering it?
I think one of the really important things to remember is that Democrats actually used to have representation at the federal level here in North Dakota.
They sure
For
did.
30 years, Democrats represented with 2 senators and our statewide congressional member. They were held by Democrats. In fact, when the ACA was passed, Democrats had Senate seats here in North Dakota, 2 of them, and South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa. And it just goes to show that we can get a lot done, a lot of really good things done when we invest in these rural states. And so one of the things that we talk about are those representatives that we used to have who were really effective at advocating, whether it was for ranchers or people who were struck by an anhydrous ammonia railroad disaster in Minot. I mean, there are so many specific examples of our former representatives working for the people. I know that Senator Heitkamp was an amazing senator. She did so much casework for North Dakotans. And, in 2018, right, we had a blue wave across the country, but Senator Heitkamp, unfortunately, was really targeted by Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell to win this seat. And Donald Trump came to North Dakota 4 times. He's not doing that now. He's a little busy. He's a little busy in some other places. So we're really hopeful that we can kind of take advantage of that weakness for Kevin, because he's always failed upward. He doesn't have a record that North Dakotans are familiar with in terms of advocating for them. They only associate him with other people. And so we're just going to talk to people where they are. I mean, I have been on the trail for 9 days straight talking to voters. I mean, I've just been so impressed by how innovative and resilient small business owners had to be during COVID to make it out. I've been meeting with ranchers and how they've been sidelined by our representatives with the consolidation in the meatpacking industry and not taking their concerns and their ideas seriously. Talking to teachers, the educational, burnout, turnover in North Dakota is really scary. And talking to young voters, old voters, middle-aged voters about affordable housing and affordable healthcare. Those, I'm not talking about what I care about. I want to know what they care about and how I can help them. I got in this for my kids. I got in this because I was really tired of the polarization in our politics. I can't help thinking after every one of my encounters, like if we just lowered the rhetoric right away, these races would be so competitive because we are the party of freedom. We want people to have economic freedom. We want to have freedom for healthcare choices. We want them to have freedom to pursue what careers they want.
Freedom over their bodies, freedom to what to read, freedom to who to love. Like, we really are the party of freedom. I mean, what you're saying is so important because I think that's why you're doing so well with small donors and people who have never donated before. And just so people understand, 98% of Katrina's donations are less than $200, and 96% of them come from first-time donors, people who have never donated before.
And we outraised Kevin in our pre-primary report by $160,000. Now, recognize that in North Dakota, the media market's a little bit different. So a $10 donation in North Dakota is equivalent to $125 in Chicago, right? The media market here is like probably the cheapest in the nation. So donor money goes a really long way here. And I'm not taking any corporate PAC money. That is one thing that I connect with people on. Like, I want to represent them. And I think the thing that really resonates is I'm not thinking about like, okay, if I get elected, what am I going to do to stay elected? I'm not interested in that. Like, there is no better time to address these issues than right now. Kevin said, we'll wait to do these tax cuts. We'll wait to do the border security. I don't have time for that. You don't have time for that. We need action now. And so we need effective people in office. And so that resonates with independents. We're going to get those split ticket voters. I will give you a little historical fact. So in 2004, when Byron Dorgan, he was a Democrat senator here in North Dakota, he won all the counties in North Dakota. George Bush won all the counties in North Dakota, I think, or maybe he didn't win too. But right there was a tradition of split ticket voting in North Dakota. And I think, getting out there, I had a small business owner that I met with last month who said, it takes a lot of courage to come up here and talk to me. And he asked for a sign to put in his window. And so, yeah, it's just doing that really hard work that Kevin's not.
Well, I mean, like you said, Heidi Heitkamp should never have lost her seat. She's an absolute force of nature. She's an absolute she was a fabulous senator. She's a fabulous leader. But the Republicans had to throw nearly $10 million in outside spending at that race at the last minute. And Donald Trump had to come, so many times to secure that win.
When we look at expanding the map or what it means to have competitive races in the country, right? Come November, if we can make Kevin have to spend money here, that means that Mitch McConnell, to defend a seat, is going to have to spend money here instead of in places like Montana or Ohio. And so it's really important to have competitive races in these red states to make the other races for incumbents that are challenging maybe not as challenging. So
yeah, and to be honest, they don't have the money this time because all their focus is going to the Trump campaign and all their money is going to the Trump campaign. And Laura is running the Trump campaign, so it's all going to Trump. So the votes are there in North Dakota if we make sure the money is. And like you're saying, you've clearly put together, this a great campaign that no one saw coming, but it is not expensive to run ads in your market. Your money goes really far in North Dakota. It's a great return on people's investment. So we can't be writing off states like yours because a North Dakota Senate vote is the same as a Massachusetts Senate vote. It's the same as a California senator's vote. But boy, are those ad markets different. Boy, will your money go a lot further in that market. And if people are listening, then we need to make sure we are throwing the right amount of support at you because your vote would count just as much as Senator Elizabeth Warren's vote.
Right. And we can flip this seat back to blue. It wasn't that long ago, really, historically looking, that it was held by a Democrat. And we just got to reach those voters and get that turnout up. Our turnout in 2022 was really abysmal. And so we want to run a positive campaign focused on economic issues, focused on social issues that people care about, but in a not polarizing way, right? In a way that's like,
yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
we're gonna be the adults in the room and we're gonna solve these problems and we're gonna talk to you about solving these problems, not getting you angry, not getting you discouraged. That's really important to me, is to stay grounded in what works.
I want to remind people about Washington's 3rd district, which was a congressional district in 2022. And we did a lot of work with Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, who was running against Trump golden boy Joe Kemp. And nobody thought she could win. They were like, forget it. No one knows who she is. He's this superstar. Trump keeps going. Matt Gaetz is going. Everyone's going. It's going to go to a Republican. And she just kept doing what you're doing, which is going out, understanding the voters' issues, going to small towns, talking to real people in grocery stores and gas stations and connecting about real values from that district. And it was an authentic grassroots campaign, just as yours is. And people voted for her. They came out, they voted for Republicans bigger, but they voted for her because they were like, she understands me. She's talking to me. And she's now in Congress doing an insane job for Washington 03. And people have to remember that you want to be represented in the Senate. You want your vote to count. You want your voice to be heard. And if you get someone like Kevin, he's not there for you. He's there to further his own career. He's running because he's a vote for the party. He will do whatever he is told. And you're there to build a better home state for your family, like you said, and for other people's families. And that's probably the biggest difference between the two of you.
Right. And so whether I'm in a Democratic audience, an independent audience, or even speaking to GOP members, I remind them that Kevin is a really good politician. You wouldn't be where he is if you weren't a good politician. But he's only really good at identifying problems, whether it's with the border bill or why we can't cap prescription drug prices, or whether it's too expensive to give working class people tax cuts. He identifies a problem and then he assigns blame. Right? He's got to have a scapegoat. And we know that that's going to be his campaign when he finally gets around to running one. No, seriously. Yeah, he's a little lazy. Career politician, completely content to do nothing. And so when we remind people of that out on the trail, and hopefully when, we get our digital marketing and TV up, it's going to be obvious. The contrast is there. I've got 3 patents. I have 3 kids. I understand what it's like when money's tight. I get that. And I really think that if we focus on the issues that people care about rather than the issues we have been trained by, media consultants or political consultants to get people riled up, we can do better. One of the things that I love about living in the United States of America is just the amazing things we can achieve, whether it's the ACA getting passed or, the Apollo missions, and now we're going to Mars. I mean, there are just so many things, wonderful things we can be fantastic at. And I want to stay focused on those things.
Well, like you said, the Affordable Care Act, the PACT Act, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, all this stuff for the environment. This all happened just under the Joe Biden presidency just in the last couple of years. We can actually make these things happen and they can really help people. Obviously, the ACA happened under Obama, but North Dakotans don't deserve to lose their rights or their Social Security or their access to health care. All the things the Republicans are threatening to take just because they put a Republican leader back in that seat as a guaranteed vote against their rights, but for the Republican position. As you said, Kevin Cramer is a really good politician, but he's not a really good representative. And you can be great at identifying a problem. The question is, can you solve it? And he cannot. His goal is to blame people for it. And you want to get in there and solve it. And honestly, I think you can do it. I think if we can win in a place like North Dakota, a place where no one is paying attention, we can really start making a difference to the way the Senate is made up and really start representing the states again and not just the parties.
Yes.
I think if you can win, then we can show people that competing in these red rural states can be effective. And then we can start building a winning coalition for the American people and not just a winning coalition for the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. So please tell people how they can keep up with you to keep your ball rolling, help your campaign, and just take this seat right out from under the noses of the Republicans. I think people would really love to see that.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on and the opportunity to talk to you today. We do need to expand the map to keep the majority. We need to be fighting in these states. We have a strong history of electing Democrats, so we can do this again. I'd be grateful for your viewers' support. You can go to KatrinaForUSSenate.com, Katrina for US Senate on Facebook and Instagram, and Katrina for ND on Twitter, which is where I found you. So they can help. That would be tremendous. We want this to be grassroots when we win in November.
Yeah. And people have to know you send $100 to Katrina. That's going way farther than anywhere else.
Yeah, that's $1,250 in Illinois, if my math's right.
There you go. So thank you so much for joining us today, Katrina. Ultimately, people don't have to be from North Dakota or from Florida when we talk to Debbie to care about these races. You have to want the Democrats to keep power in the Senate. You have to want to protect our rights, our values, our democracy. And you also have to think it would be kind of awesome to snag a seat from the Republicans that they're just expecting to win outright because we cared enough to do it.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for coming.
I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy smart girl life to run and do government because we need people like you out there.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Lee.
So that was Senate candidate for Florida, Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, and Senate candidate for North Dakota, Katrina Christensen. I need you to understand that both women could win these races. No one is looking at them, but those states are totally up for grabs. If you have some money, please donate. Your money will go so far in North Dakota, where the Republican candidate is unliked and unfunded, and it will help stop the self-funded fraud Rick Scott from achieving his dream of being Mitch McConnell 2.0. These seats can flip from red to blue. It's entirely possible with all that's on the line. We need to show this country that every state can be in play. The Republicans can't just strip us of our rights and our Social Security and our health care without a fight. The battleground states are key, but we can win in these states too. I want to thank Debbie and Katrina for joining us today and you for caring enough about democracy to be here. Now send these women a couple of dollars and stick it to the idea of a safe red state. Until next week, PG out. The Politics Girl podcast is written and performed by me, Lee McGowan, in partnership with the Meidas Media Network and produced and edited by Happy Warrior Entertainment. All rights reserved.